I haven't made an evangelical tier list yet, so I figured I'd rank my favorite televangelists or religious cults in order of strangest beliefs. We've got 8 to choose from, though there are obviously way more extreme groups out there. So let's take a look at who we'll be talking about. We've got Greg Locke, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Robin Bullock, QAnon, Kenneth Copeland, Kat Kerr, and Heaven's Gate. Okay, let's get into it.
Are you telling me my kid's possessed?
No, I'm telling you, your kid could be demonized and attacked, but your doctor calls it autism.
That's a bizarre one. He's pushing his way up to S as we speak, but it definitely gets weirder. Check this one out.
Did you know that we could go to a crazy house right now? I'm talking about a padded party room. Moaning, screaming, crying, and all they do is keep them doped up on medication and keep them worse. Get them off that medication for about 45 hours and let me and the deliverance team walk up in one of them crazy houses with some Bibles and some anointing oil. And I'm telling you, we can cast out the spirit of multiple personality, insanity, madness, the lunatic spirit.
Oh yeah, you guessed it. Greg Locke believes that there are no mental conditions. There's no such thing. He thinks it's demon possession. He was kind of hinting at it in the autism video. That's pretty strange. But how about this one? A few months ago, he gets on stage and he says this.
We got first and last names of 6 witches that are in our church. And you know what's strange? 3 of you are in this room right now. You better look in my eyeballs. We ain't afraid of you, you stinking witch. You devil-worshiping Satanist witch. We cast you out in the name of Jesus Christ. We break your spells. We break your curse. We got your first name. We got your last name. We even got an address for one of you.
He went on a witch hunt. He believed people in his church were spell-casting witches, and he eventually did actually go out there and name them. But his reason for believing there were witches in his church gets even stranger than that. Watch the next part of the same clip.
We got all 6 of their names. All 6 of them. 2 of them had already been confirmed before that thing ever even said it.
That thing? What's he talking about? He says a demon told him the names of the witches. That is bizarre. Coming from an evangelical background, it makes me wonder why he'd believe a demon in the first place. But here we are. I think I'd put that in the A rank. Surprisingly, it does get weirder. We'll get there. Let's take a look at the next one. Guess what these people are doing? This is early November 2021. These are members of QAnon in Dallas, Texas, where John F. Kennedy died, gathering to see John F. Kennedy's son, JFK Jr., reveal to the world that he's actually alive. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, JFK Jr., John F. Kennedy's son, died in a plane crash on July 16, 1999. The people standing on the grass here believe the plane crash was faked, and JFK Jr. is about to make a surprise appearance and announce that he'll be running as Trump's vice president. Like I said, this basically just happened. That's weird. There are some other weird ones, but I'll leave it at that for QAnon. I'd put them at a solid S rank. The next one I want to look at is Jehovah's Witnesses. This is the group I came from originally. I'm going a little off script for this one, and going with a belief that isn't official doctrine, but it's something most Jehovah's Witnesses born in the 80s or 90s had heard. The Smurfs story. When the Smurfs were making their cultural splash, Jehovah's Witnesses went on an anti-Smurf campaign. They believed the Smurfs was an evil cartoon created by Satan to destroy young minds. So when I was little, I was told the Smurf story. There was a little girl that had a Smurf doll in her purse. She went to the Kingdom Hall and was sitting there listening to the guy give his talk when suddenly the Smurf doll came to life and hopped out of the purse. Turns out Smurfs are so evil that this one was possessed by Satan. It couldn't handle the light of Jehovah in the Kingdom Hall, so it climbed out of the purse and exited the Kingdom Hall, swearing all the way out. This was presented as a real story to me by some family members. Since I left the religion, I found lots of references to the Smurf story all over the ex-Jehovah's Witness world. Different people heard different variations. A girl had a Smurf book and it jumped off the page and walked out. Sometimes the Smurf says something specific. That's pretty heckin' weird. It's honestly hard to beat that one. I'm putting that solidly in the A rank with Greg Locke's belief that mental conditions aren't real. The next one we've got is Kat Kerr. Before we continue, I wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But you can also check out my Twitch channel. I go through long-form videos of the type of people we're talking about in this video.
Now, Charlie Darwin wrote a book on the table down here called Origin of species. See, a dog and a wolf are the same kind of animal, but they're different species.
What's the difference? Kent, tell me, what's the difference? Is there a difference? When you hold his feet to the fire, Ken Ham and others, other creationists, young earth creationists, define kind as the exact definition that everyone else uses for species. So if you want to watch videos of these televangelists and others in their full context, check out Twitch. If you don't really like Twitch, you can check out my other channel, Telltale Unfiltered, where I edit it down and upload the Twitch streams later. All links are in the description as always. Anyways, let's continue with Kat Kerr. You might remember her from this video that went viral a while back.
So right now, at this moment, we take authority over Dorian that has no right off the coast of this state or anywhere. And we hit that storm to the east right now. And I'm going to do it 3 times. We hit it to the east. We hit it to the east and command it. You go to the east, out away from land. We declare you will do no destruction in any way. We won't tolerate it.
That's a pretty weird belief in itself, but surprisingly, that isn't the one we're talking about today. Although I do want to point out that this isn't a one-time thing. She believes she controls the weather.
We together are going to take authority over these storms, one in the Gulf, one in the Pacific. We're not tolerating any destruction, any death, any severe flooding, no tornadoes, no damage of any kind whatsoever. And you know why, all of you 5,000 weather warriors. Yay! Thanks for being here with us tonight. We have been doing this now since 2015, I think. 2017 was one of the greatest times we had. We created that whole wall, that wall of faith on the East Coast.
Yeah, she's been doing this for a long time. Those are just 2 hurricanes, Dorian and Ida. There were far, far more. She does this just about every time a major storm appears. But I want to touch on why it's important to talk about her in the first place. Did you hear how many people she had listening when she was streaming?
And you know why, all of you 5,000 weather warriors. Yay! Thanks for being here with us tonight.
5,000 viewers on her live stream. Holy frick. That is really big. I've been doing my podcast on my Fireside Chat channel for like 4 years now. Every Sunday at 8:30 p.m., like clockwork. And I've only ever reached 2,000 live viewers. It's usually closer to 1,000. She has a significantly bigger social media presence than me. And aside from her social media presence, she's extremely influential in the Christian evangelical world. People listen to her. She helps write curriculums for religious schools. She's believed to be a prophet who unironically, seriously, visits heaven on a regular basis. And as a regular heaven tourist, she's given us some insight into what it's like there. Here's where it gets weird. She was describing what it's like in heaven one time, and you know what? I'll just let you listen. Check this out.
There is rain in heaven. There is absolutely nothing destructive. There's no earthquakes. No, there are volcanoes, but they're for entertainment. They're for fun. You get to ride the lava out.
Really?
Yeah, you get to ride out on the lava. It has substance. It's a literal volcano, but it wouldn't harm you. And yes, people can go inside and they ride the lava out for a ride.
Talk about a hot seat, you know.
So she went on a podcast back in 2018 and she was describing something she saw while she was visiting God in heaven on one of her regular trips. Listen to this one, late September 2018.
We were talking about the body parts warehouse earlier.
Yeah.
And how all that happens. You know, how do you requisition heaven to release a body part if you're praying for a friend or a family member that really needs something, you know, they need surgery, their liver, their heart, whatever part. They actually do have a body parts warehouse in heaven, and several people have been there and seen it.
That's weird. A body part warehouse, you say? Just wait, it gets even weirder, surprisingly. She keeps going.
They actually have a protocol on how they operate, like sort of like what we hear on the earth. They actually have a huge reception. The counter that this reception is in is like the universe is in this whole counter. As you're looking down, you're seeing creation and creativity all over in the universe while you're waiting. And what happens is when someone prays in faith and asks for a body part to be sent, they say, I ask for a requisition to be given to the body parts warehouse that my friend needs a new heart or they need new eyes, whatever that requisition is. When that prayer is released, it's sent to this body parts warehouse, and they will call for an angel to come from the back of the warehouse, and they will hand them this requisition, which is the request. They then take it into this other place. I haven't been in the other place, but I know they're getting it approved. It has to be stamped, approved for this time, or else they would stamp it for another time.
She hasn't been in the other place, but she was in the main warehouse apparently. She saw the angel sitting behind the desk waiting for requests. Quick question there, Kat. Why would God pre-create these body parts when he's all-powerful? Couldn't he create an angel to create these body parts as needed? Couldn't he just snap his fingers and replace all the bad hearts and livers and eyes of every single faithful Christian on earth at the exact same moment? How do they keep them from spoiling? Are they in refrigeration units? And if this really does exist, then it seems like we should be able to detect it scientifically. Somebody starts out with bad eyes, right? Their vision is 20/10 or 10/20, whichever is worse. You pray for this person to receive new eyes. Then we measure their vision again. We should be able to tell if it's really actually happening. If it's real, then it's measurable. But guess what? We've never seen it happen before. If faith healers really can requisition new body parts from heaven, then you sitting on this TV show talking instead of spending literally every waking moment at a hospital healing people seems like one of the most immoral things in history. You could be saving people's lives right now, but instead you're trying to build your brand by talking to an audience about supposed miracles that you could perform. Honestly, all it would take for me to suddenly turn to a believer is one single miracle from you. Show me that you performed a miracle and I am instantly a believer. Unfortunately for hospitals everywhere, you haven't performed even one verifiable miracle. I'm putting Kat Kerr in the A rank for strange beliefs. Surprisingly, once again, it definitely gets weirder. Next group is Mormonism. Honestly, the premise of the whole religion is kind of bizarre when you look at it in the cold light of day. The founder says he found some gold plates written in an ancient language, and he found some special rocks that he used to translate the gold plates. He'd put the rock in the hat and stick his head in it, where the rock would tell him what the plate said. But wait, why did he need the plates in the first place if the rock was telling him everything? So he didn't actually need the plates until he didn't need the stones either. He ditched the stone and just dictated everything to somebody who was writing it down eventually. All of this is strange in itself. I don't really need to go further, but you know me, I'm your Huckleberry, so let's go that extra mile. This is what I like to call the deep cut. There was a Mormon prophet described in some Mormon writings who claimed to have encountered a large humanoid monster while riding his horse, and this humanoid monster was as tall as him on horseback, obviously super tall, and the prophet revealed that the monster he encountered was actually Cain of Cain and Abel. So what did Mormons learn from this story? They learned that Cain is still alive and wandering around today, and that he's Bigfoot. No joke. People buy into the strangest ideas in the name of religion. Bless their weird little hearts. I'm marking them down as a B. The next one on this list is Kenneth Copeland. Copeland is strange for a number of different reasons, and honestly, his appearance alone could be enough for me to rank him S tier. But I'm not going to be mean. Let's take a look at some of his weirder ideas. A few years ago, he bought a $45 million private jet, and he got all kinds of pushback for it. People started calling him a scam artist and accusing him of taking advantage of his congregation and all that. So he went on air to defend himself. He had a conversation with fellow televangelist Jesse Duplantis, and in that conversation, he said this.
You can't manage that today.
Right.
This dope-filled world.
Right.
And get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Right. That's exactly the
And
truth.
it's deadly.
And it works on you hard. It really does.
Well, that's probably not great for your brand. Buy a private jet for $45 million, an amount of money that could pay for you to fly first class every day, 365 days a year, for 123 years straight, and tell critics that you can't fly commercial because it's like getting in a tube full of demons. Well done. It gets worse. Here's the strange belief. Instead of just dropping it and moving on with his life, he continued to bring up the private jet on his show, over and over and over. This is from early January 2022.
It just seemed like it was overnight. The money and the way it came in, people would send money in and say, "We don't know what you're fixing, but here's some more money." We don't know, and then I have a lot of aviators that are partners, to the ministry, and they'd say, "I don't know, it seemed like Brother Copeland needs an overhaul on engines or something," and they would earmark it. And it just, whoo, and there it was. And it just seemed like it was overnight.
Obviously trying to get people to send money into him to keep his airplane running, as if he needs their money. He's worth like $750 million. Anyways, he had his daughter on the show. She realized how callous he sounded saying that, so she tries to back him up. Check it out.
You know, Dad, people have, sometimes I think they have a problem with preachers saying something like that. Somebody's out there probably right now saying, well, he just wants your money right now. That's why he's saying that. But when we put our money on the table, we're telling the Lord, I'm taking what I have that may be this much of what I need, but I'm taking what I have and putting it in your hands because I trust you for my source. You're my source. So it's not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick. Wow. This really bothered him deeply. The fact that people recognized that he was taking advantage of his congregation obviously got to him. All he had to do was clam up and move on, but he couldn't figure that out. So one day the subject of Christian persecution comes up on his show, and he comes out and says this.
All you have to do, Jeremy, to incur a lot more persecution is buy 2 airplanes.
This wasn't a slip of the tongue either. That one came out late January 2022. Check this one out from early February 2022.
And if you want some nasty books written about you, I can tell you how to do it. Prosper financially and get you an airplane. Here it comes, I mean. And then you get the second airplane and they come out of the woodwork.
Seems like something he really does believe. I mean, there are Christians suffering terribly for their beliefs in Middle Eastern countries right now. And even in Russia, they're in hiding. They can't come out as who they are because they fear for their lives. But what's the real problem here? The real problem is people criticizing Kenneth Copeland for owning a $45 million jet. That isn't even his only airplane. He has 4 of them. So that's the next strange belief. The idea that Kenneth Copeland is persecuted, and the root of that persecution is the fact that he owns 4 airplanes. I'm marking that down as C because as it's pretty weird, I don't think it really touches a crowd of people standing on a grassy knoll waiting for JFK Jr. to reappear and run for president with Donald Trump. The next one is Robin Bullock. For those who are unfamiliar, he's a pretty high-profile televangelist who's also extremely influential in the prophetic evangelical world. People listen to him, hoping he'll impart prophetic knowledge. He claims to have direct conversations with God regularly, and apparently he brings them to heaven pretty regularly too, like Kat Kerr. Check this clip out.
I've been to heaven in different throne rooms a few times. And when you got to the end of it, but the white throne, it's set up on about 7 tiers. And when you look down at it, it was massive. It was a massive thing. And it was inside this cube of like gelatin. It was like clear gelatin. And inside this cube of gelatin, it was clear, like it was pure energy. It was power. It was just like electricity alive inside this cube.
So God lives in Jell-O, apparently. This one is news to me. Funny enough, that isn't even the strange belief. That's just an introduction to Robin Bullock. Like I said, people take this dude seriously. They listen to him. There's somebody at home right now watching his show on TV, and boy does he get upset when you point out his false prophecies. He claimed Trump would be re-inaugurated in 2021. He said God told him that. He imparted divine revelation to him. So when he didn't get re-inaugurated, he had some explaining to do. What did he do? He came out on stage and yelled at people.
Apologize. Go ahead and apologize. Well, no! How about that? Just so you can hear me again. No! Because you are wrong. You keep your doctrines, but I'll tell you what, you are going to answer for trying to regulate the Lord's prophets. You with your big educations. You're going to answer for trying to regulate a prophet of the Lord and telling a prophet of the Lord that what God said is not true, but what you said is true. You're in trouble. You're in trouble now.
Oh, I love it. You prophesied that Biden would never be president, and when he gets inaugurated, you get upset at everybody else. Again, not even the weird belief, just an introduction to the dude. So here's the strange belief. This one was from June 2021. Check this clip out.
But I remember he leaned into the mic and told President Trump, "We're coming for you." And he growled out this demonic sound. I can't make the sound, but It was this demonic voice. I've heard him make it again recently. And he growled this out. When he did, I went back and I took a picture. I think it was at that moment. It was one of the moments I took a picture with my phone right on television. Yes. Okay, it's up there. Now look at the eyes. If you'll look at the eyes, you'll notice they're serpent's pupils. They're slotted pupils. Now, other times, they're not like that. But at times, it shows a slotted serpent's eye. And people say, oh, that was Photoshop. No, it wasn't either. I took the picture.
Oh yes, he believes that Biden is a lizard person. He also believes Fauci is a lizard person. This dude truly is a hoot. The tagline on my channel is hilarious and sad for this exact reason right here. I'm marking this down as a B. It's weird, but it isn't the weirdest. I decided to save that honor for last. The final weirdest belief I've got is about the Heaven's Gate cult. I'll put them on the board right now. They are S-tier strange. This group is known as a UFO cult, and they were active from the early 70s, about 1974, to their eventual exit from Earth in 1997. They were run by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. They called Bonnie T, and Marshall went by Doe, like the musical notes, T and Doe. They claimed to be aliens in human bodies. They also believed that aliens didn't have any kind of sexuality, so it's something they shunned and fought against for themselves and their members. They believed they were asexual when they were alien spirits, and the interest that came with the bodies they were currently in was a corruption of their spirits. T and Doe were not married, they weren't together, they were simply partners. Doe was married to a woman and taught at the University of Alabama for a while until he lost his position after getting caught having a relationship with a male student. His wife found out about the affair in 1965, and that eventually led to their divorce. Remember, at this time, being gay or getting divorced were absolutely socially unacceptable. It just wasn't done. It was a completely different time. He told his parents he believed he was gay, and his father rejected him. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems reasonable that the entire event probably made him feel deep shame, especially considering how it was viewed at the time. I'm assuming it probably drove him over the edge and forced him to shun romantic feelings entirely. When Bonnie died of cancer in 1985, just 11 years into the formation of the group, it threw a wrench into the belief system. They based their whole theology around the idea that they were going to be picked up by aliens one day, but she wasn't supposed to die before the plans came to fruition. So over the next 12 years, from when she died in 1985 to when they checked out in 1997, Doe started getting more and more extreme. All the believers lived in a big mansion together. They gave all their money to Doe to manage, and they continue to bring in money to survive by making websites for people. If you're curious, you can still see the Heaven's Gate website. It's currently up, because when they all checked out, they left one person behind to manage the estate. Book sales, copyright claims, email responses, all of it. They believed that when they checked out, they were going to be picked up by a spaceship flying past Earth, and Earth was going to be completely destroyed after they left. Or recycled, as they called it. This person agreed to stick around and watch it burn to ashes around them to maintain the properties of the group. I think all of that put together puts him in S tier for the strangest belief of all time. You really can't beat that. The whole thing was terribly tragic. There were a total of 39 members who ascended to the evolutionary level above human together on that fateful night in 1997, one of whom was the brother of Uhura from the original Star Trek. Like I said, I'm putting them on S tier. I don't think anybody's gonna beat that. Cults and extremist movements have a cost to joining. That cost can be social, financial, time-based, or any other number of things. In Scientology's case, the cost is financial. It costs up to $100,000 and between 1 and 4 years to get to a level they call clear, which qualifies you to be some sort of leader in the cult. It's like getting baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. It's hard. There's a steep barrier to entry. Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a financial barrier to entry like Scientologists do, but joining the group requires a time investment of hours and hours per week, for at least a year. Mormonism makes it easy to be on the outskirts of the religion, but if you really want to go all in, you're gonna have to do mission trips and everything. Mission trips include leaving the country for a period of time, 18 months to 2 years, get thrown into a foreign area where you completely rely on the church for absolutely everything, not to mention 10% of your yearly income. That's mandatory. Greg Locke doesn't require much of a monetary or time investment to be part of the church, but the sacrifice you have to make in that group is social. When people in your life find out you're a part of his church, there are social consequences for it. You're automatically recognized as the extremist that you are. Heaven's Gate, the UFO cult from the 90s, required you to leave your friends and family behind and live in a mansion with with all the other members. They even went as far as to castrate themselves with no anesthesia or medical professionals nearby because they believed they were aliens and they weren't supposed to take part in any earthly pleasures like that. I'm grossly simplifying it, but you get my drift. The social cost was massively high for them, and you can see the cost reflected in their membership, how many ex-members they have, and what the ex-members have to say when they leave. So if you want to know which group requires a bigger time, financial, or social investment, you need look no further than the membership numbers. It's not a perfect indicator, but it'll give you some ideas of what you're dealing with. Another factor to consider is that these groups are constantly trying to find some way to counteract that and bring new people in despite the high costs. Mormons try to grow their numbers by finding emotionally, physically, and financially vulnerable people. Get them to lean on you when they're at their worst, and they'll never leave. Mormons even go overseas to developing nations to find people who are in particularly bad shape. And this has to be tempered with the knowledge that the United States is a Christian nation, so people like Kenneth Copeland automatically have a leg up because he's preaching what most people in the US already kind of believe. He just has to nudge them a little further down the road. When you're dealing with movements like the evangelical movement or QAnon, rather than strict top-down hierarchical cults like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormonism, you're more working with concentric circles than strict numbers. So for example, there are somewhere around 15 million QAnon believers. We don't really know exactly how many because it isn't a strict belief system that has a leadership capable of counting the members and communicating the data to the rest of the world. We have to base it off polls. The number of people who believe there was election fraud, which there wasn't by the way, but the number of people who believe it is relatively high in the United States, somewhere around 33%. But the number of people who believe that JFK Jr. is going to return and be Trump's vice president when he retakes the White House in 2022, that one's a little smaller. There's an inner circle that buys everything, every bit of it, but the less extreme ideas they espouse gain popularity among less extreme people. That's the kind of thing you have to account for when you deal with movements rather than top-down hierarchical cults. So like I said, it isn't a perfect measurement. It's something cults constantly fight against. They're always trying to either lower the social cost or make the more moderate ideas more palatable, or both. But the membership numbers give us some idea of what we're working with. If we're following that metric, this is what the chart would look like. Heaven's Gate would be the most harmful with 39 members. Then Robin Bullock, then Kat Kerr, then Greg Locke, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, QAnon, and Kenneth Copeland. 39 people checked out with Heaven's Gate in 1996. They just couldn't get more members to commit. Plus, they never really reached critical mass. If more people had bought into it from the start, maybe they could have found a way to adapt and grow despite the high cost of joining. But the very fact that, say, Jehovah's Witnesses are bigger than Heaven's Gate means they're negatively affecting more people's lives than Heaven's Gate could ever dream of reaching. So it's a trade-off. The people lower on the list do more damage to society as a whole, and the people higher up on the list do more damage to smaller segments of society in focused ways. Scientology is known to lie about their membership numbers, but I've seen some estimates peg it at around 40 to 100,000. Jehovah's Witnesses are hovering around 8.5 million worldwide, or about 1.3 million in the US. There's obviously some crossover in some of this. Greg Locke, Robin Bullock, and Kat Kerr buy into and spread QAnon ideas. They're kind of part of the same movement, though they each have their own cult followings. But since we can kind of roughly determine how harmful a movement or group is based on their membership, this video isn't about how harmful each group is. It's the strangest beliefs of each. If you disagree with my assessment, if you think I should go in a different order, or you have an even stranger one for me, tweet it at me at Telltale Atheist. Link is in the description. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching, guys.